Welcome back. Trust you're all well. So today marks the first video of our Lumion tutorial series. I will be uploading every other day in proper order so that after every video you'll be able to try out and then move on to the next part. And at the end of the tutorial series you should be able to create some fantastic renders professionally and hopefully boost your 3D career. And to those who are new to my channel, if you find my content useful, then please do like, subscribe and share, and also click on the notification bell to stay updated with my future uploads. And to all my subscribers, I love you all. Thank you. So, in this part of the video, I'll be introducing you to the Lumion interface, and we'll be ending the video with a beautiful scenery render inside Lumion, which is completely modeled and rendered in Lumion. And at the end of the video you should be able to create something like this, or you can have your own landscape created. So the moment you open up Lumion, you will be presented with a screen that looks like this. On the welcome screen you will have a benchmark, where actually in the beginning the benchmark runs by itself. If you open up Lumion for the first time, you run the benchmark first. And on the left hand side you've got a create new project. If you click on that, you'll see there are different environments. Then you've got examples, a few example scenes from the company itself, which we will be using later on in order to tweak the settings and things like that to get those realistic renders. Then you've got the benchmark tab, of course, and then you've got load. If you have previously worked on any file, you can load it from there. And of course you've got the save as or save button over here. So I'm going to go with the create new button for now. So click on that and you can select from different environments if required, but I'm going to go with the plain environment for now. So click on the plain environment, and the moment you click on it, you should be presented with this screen. And it's completely empty really. So on the bottom left hand side you see there are a few tabs here. On top you've got the layers. Over here you've got your computer performance, and on the right hand side you've got build mode, photo mode, movie for animations, for panorama, and of course saving your files and settings there. So first off I'm going to cover the bottom left hand corner, which is kind of important to us. Before I start that, I'd like to bring to your attention, in order to move in Lumion you can use your up, down, left and right arrow keys, and in order to zoom in you can use your mouse roller button, and in order to rotate in Lumion you'll have to click on your right click to rotate in Lumion. Yeah, it's kind of weird in the beginning, but you'll get hold of it for sure. It's alright. So first off you've got the content library. Under the content library you've got import. Import new model basically lets you import a model from an external software, which we will be covering in the next part of our tutorial series. So that's import new model. Important models are the models that you've imported to your scene so far, so they get stored under a layer or under a folder. And then after that you've got the nature library. Double clicking on that will open up this tab for you. So under the nature library you've got many different trees, rocks, weeds, flowers, plants. In order to get through all of them you'll have to explore the library and find out your best suit. After the nature tab you've got the fine detail nature, which basically is extremely detailed nature. They are quite limited, and because using them actually makes your file heavier because it requires more RAM and your graphics card, so use them wisely whenever required. After the fine detail nature you've got people and animals. People and animals are basically useful for filling up your scenes, exterior, interior, whatever. And you've got many animals and people. Then you've got horses, fishes, cats, dogs, everything. For static renders I'd highly recommend using the static 3D, because they look more realistic compared to the other other models of here really. So that's that. Then you've got the indoor items. Indoor items you got from sofas to chairs to decoration item to storage. Of course the library is kind of limited, but again if you want to fill up your scene, these are your best choices quickly. and if you want more control over your items, then you'll have to import them, because placing these items does not let you actually handle the textures or reflections and things like that. So yeah, so it's best that you import them. After that, you've got your outdoor items. Again, you'll have to explore the library in order to find out what they've got there from lighting and everything. So after that, you've got transport. Transport is basically buses, trains, cars, bikes. You've got everything over here, so it's up to you how you fill up your scenes. And then you've got the lights tab. Under the lights, you've got area lights, omni lights, and your spotlights. Area lights are generally used for, I'm sure everyone knows when you require area lights, but just keep in mind, if you're using Lumion 11 or lower versions, area lights and omni lights don't cast shadows. It's the spotlights that cast shadows. So use them wisely. You should know how to properly use them and place them wherever required. From Lumion, I believe from Lumion 11.5 they've got like omni light shadows and area light shadows. I'm not really sure about that, but yeah, I've heard that they've created shadows for omni lights and area lights. Light fill under omni lights is basically making your object glow. So this is a very useful light option they've got over there. Placing light fill on any object makes that object glow. So yeah, use it whenever required, really. And then you've got, that part is done. Then you've got effects. Under the effects tab, you've got smoke, fountains, volumetric fire. Then you've got leaves, falling leaves. Alright, you can tweak those values once you place them on the scene. So that's that. Sound is only for animation, where you've got different sounds for your animations. And utilities tab is for basically it's for the final bit, basically like clipping planes and things like that. If you want to clip something, you can use that. If you want to place a grid, you can use that. Then you've got a landscape cutter, which is a very handy feature. For example, you've got a swimming pool on your ground floor and you place that in Lumion, and you realize that the Lumion landscape is actually cutting through your swimming pool. So what do? You can place the landscape cutter and go to select, and you can actually tweak that. You can actually tweak the size of that landscape cutter like that. You can actually tweak the size and make it the size of the swimming pool in order to cut that landscape out from that part. Very handy feature. You can use it whenever required. Then after that, they've got measurements. You've got reflection control. Reflection control basically helps you control the reflection of your scene, of a particular scene. Basically must be placed in front of a camera whenever required. Text is basically placing text in your architecture renders. So you can type down anything you like over here, and then you can change the fade range required and change the visibility range. You've got the box styles, oriental styles, and of course you've got the height. So that can be very handy for architectural visualizations, where you want to mention something to the client. And so that's that, really. And select all categories basically lets you select every category that you've placed in your scene, and selecting any one of the categories here will only let you select the trees, for example. So that's that. Placing is basically placing models in scene from whichever tab is required. Selecting is basically selecting object, moving them freely up and down, move horizontal, move free, and of course you can type in the values if required. You can bring them down to the origin point of view if required. Rotating is basically rotating your objects. Scaling is scaling. You can make it bigger, smaller. And then you've got delete button in order to delete some items from your scene. And then you've got the undo button. Undo button basically lets you go back if you've made a mistake, and of course deselect is deselecting objects from your scene. So that's that tab. In case if you have any doubts, please let me know in the comments below, and I shall cover that for you. After that, we'll be moving on to the weather tab. The reason I'm skipping the materials and the landscape tab is because materials will be covered in other parts, which will be dealing with materials, lighting and things like that in detail. So I'll not be using the materials. I haven't got a object in my scene or a model in my scene at the moment imported. So landscape tab, I'm skipping that because it's kind of big. I'll come back after the weather, and we're going to actually create a landscape render at the end of this video, so that's why I'm keeping that for the end. So let's go to the weather tab. The weather tab is fairly simple. You've got your sky and clouds. You can use real skies if required, and you can change the heading with this circulation, this revolution button over here. and you can switch off the real skies, and you can go for the sun height. You can create a night scene while modeling. You can model under daylight if required. It's basically for modeling. You've got the sun brightness, you've got wind speed in order to see what your wind values look like by placing some trees over here. You will see the trees moving around, shaking, waving and things like that. Then you've got cloudiness. The cloudiness factor is the amount of clouds in your sky. That'll determine the softer shadows and harder shadows basically. Then you've got wind direction. So these are the 4 options really under the weather tab. We won't be using much of the weather tab. We'll be using everything else in the render tab basically. After that, so finally, if you are quite comfortable moving around in Lumion and working around it, you can now come to the landscape tab under the height tab. The height tab in the mountains is basically lets you create different landscapes in Lumion. So if you click on raise is basically raising your landscape. So if you, this is by the way, this is the brush size, and this is your brush speed, the brush strength, alternatively speaking, and this is your flatten landscape option. So if you click on this, it will flatten your landscape again if you've done some mistakes, and you can redo the entire thing again if required, or you can undo it and do that and redo that for you. So I'm just going to flatten out the landscape for now and click on the raise button and just show you that. So that's a raise, and that is lower, that lowers your thing, the landscape. That's flatten, that flattens out everything in your landscape, keeping the topography in mind. Then you've got jitter. Jitter is very handy for creating uneven landscapes. And smoothen out basically smoothens out everything on your scene, and eventually holding that down for a long time will make your landscape flat again. So yeah, that's that. So in order to create that this scenery, you can go ahead and click on the lower button, increase that brush size to somewhere there, brush strength to somewhere there, and create your own lower landscape the way you like your landscape. So I'm just going to increase the brush size speed somewhere there, and create a long line like that, of like a Death Valley kind of sort of thing. And then after you've done that, click on flatten some areas out if required, then click on smooth and smoothen those areas out, so you get that slope. The moment you have that, create a bit of jitter there on your landscape. See, it's so easy really in Lumion. To create landscapes are really easy in Lumion, to be honest. So once you have that, now we're going to move on to the next tab, that is the water tab. Water tab is basically, it's kind of limited. I feel they've got like 6 choices over here, and you can directly place an object, place the water there and resize it by holding that, and you can make your own water. But I don't find that you can move that up and down, but I don't find that very handy, to be honest. But it's there, you can use it if required. I'm just going to delete that by selecting that and left clicking on that. I'm going to move on to the, by the way, you can move the water object with this move option over here. I'm going to move on to the ocean tab. The ocean tab, you get an on off ocean button. The moment you switch it on, you'll see your entire scene becomes an ocean. So you can control that by going to the height, holding down shift basically lets you control stuff in a slower manner, except the movement. It makes the movement faster, but holding down shift for your values will let you toggle your speed, the speed of the slider. So you can bring that down, to wherever required. You can have it there like that. Any sort of landscape, it doesn't have to be exactly like mine. You can have your landscape the way you like it. You can set the color of your water the way you like it, and you can have color 1, color 2, you can have, they have already got some color presets, so I'm quite happy with that. For example, you can go with that. So that's that. Then you've got the paint tab. Paint tab is basically useful for painting your landscape. Right now you've got this one, so you can paint that. Then you can paint your landscape with that. You can paint your landscape with that if required. If you want a sandy one, you can paint your landscape with a bit of mud and things like that. You can add some mud there. So it's handy features. These features will actually help you get hold of Lumion. There are lots more, and you can actually change the landscape types from here. You've got so many different types of landscapes over here. You've got rocks and things like that. You can go with that, or you can even load your own custom diffuse and custom normal maps, which will give you the height and things like that. And from here you can toggle the side rocks, basically. So these rocks here can be changed from this. You can change the texture of those rocks from there, or you can change the entire landscape if required from these default options. So you've got so many default options. The entire landscape changes. The moment you click on that, you'll see that your landscape fills up with snow wherever you've painted that. So that's that. I'm going to change that to this one back again. So that's that. And then after that, you've got, of course, the tile size. Tile size is basically the diffuse map size of this particular objects and the paint objects. You've got that. That's a brush speed. That's brush size. Then you've got side rock texture, the one that I showed you. You can edit that. You can change that. And then you've got the toggle rock option. Toggle rock basically switches off the side rocks. So I'd recommend you keeping that. That'll make it look more realistic, basically. And you can undo, of course, if required. So that's that. OpenStreetMap is basically, it lets you it helps you get the data of a particular location into Lumion, and you will have your height maps placed in Lumion for your objects. Switching that on will connect on the internet with Google Maps, I believe, and then do that. So I'm not going to cover that for now. And then you've got the landscape grass. For the landscape grass, you've got what can I say? You've got 3D grass. So right now it's 2D, right? At the moment, you don't see much of an effect. So in order to switch that on, you can click on the landscape grass on and off, and you will instantly see that 3D grass moving around because of the wind and stuff. You can toggle your grass size, then you can toggle your grass height, and you can toggle the wildness. Wildness basically lets you create these uneven grass shapes everywhere. So that's that, really. So once you're happy with that, you can now follow the steps that I'm doing at the moment in order to create the landscape. Just the way I modeled it, let it be, and you can create your own landscapes if required. So you should be able to create your landscape with the help of that. And after that, what you'll do is, in order to fill up your scene because it looks empty, you'll go back to your content library, use the nature tab, and fill it up with your with as many trees and wood, dry wood and dead trees as possible. You've got all the options over here. Under the cluster tabs, you can actually place tree clusters, which will help you fill up your scene quickly. Basically, these are all do you see that these are all tree clusters, really? So you can actually fill up your scene with the help of these tree clusters. Very handy features you've got over here. Of course, you'll have to try them out again and place that there. And once you're happy there, place a few detailed nature in front of your camera or in front of your scene. Again, detailed nature cannot be copied like the other normal nature items, because, and you can, oh, by the way, while placing nature items, you can actually double click on that, and you can actually paint placement, single placement. If you want to place something, you can go for mass placement. Mass placement is basically, let me just show you that. You've got one tree, right? So for single placement, is just a single tree there. Yeah, I've got my proxies on. I'll show you the settings in a bit. And in order for mass placement, you get an arrow. So left click on that point, and move with your right click. Move with your right click wherever you want to place your trees. Left click again. You'll get number of options basically. So number of items, you can increase the number of items. You can increase the direction required. Then you've got randomized direction, and you've got randomized spacing along line, and you've got randomized offset along that line. So that'll help you create that offset, that that dense forest if required. So the moment you pull that slider up, you can add more trees if required. You can place everything on landscape. You can click on that, it will be placed on landscape. And you can, as for example, I want to add this tree with that. You can keep adding if required. You can add this after that. You can add whatever, really. You can add these weeds if required. And the moment you're happy with it, confirm and return to build mode. So now if you look at it, and if you go through that point there, you will see that your scene is filled up with these random trees basically. Another useful feature, that is. So that's that. You create your own scene, fill it up with trees, and get back to me. So I went ahead and created this landscape scenery, completely modeled in Lumion, by the way, with the help of landscape tab. I modeled the entire thing, and I used the content library trees and detailed nature to fill up the scene. So what I did, I'll just explain to you how I fill up the entire scene. So for close-up camera view, I used a few detailed nature, and for the further ones I used the clusters, the tree clusters. And I'd like to show you how you can place objects quickly in Lumion as a beginner. So in order to place any object, most of the objects actually, not any, except the fine detailed nature, you can just double click on that. For example, I want to place this plant. This is single placement, in case you missed that in the previous one. This is single placement, means you'll just place one object in your scene. The mass placement is basically places a lot of objects, not the same. You can add in variations, you can add in different objects in the same scene. So clicking there will fill up your scene. I've got so many different objects, and it just filled up the entire space with that many 100 items in that area, of course. And you can reduce that area by setting the offset line there, somewhere there. Yeah, you can have it like that if required. That's the other option. The next option is cluster placement. Cluster placement basically places it randomly in your scene, a few items. After that, you've got the paint placement. Paint placement is basically, for example, if you hold on a tree like that, and if you paint it, depending on the density, it'll create a cluster of trees like that. So that's paint placement basically. So that's it really. I filled up my scene with the help of these options, and I put a tow van over here with a boat and two people there. Then I went ahead and created a road kind of scene that looks like a road with the help of landscape tab again. Put a car there, put a few outdoor, went to the buildings tab and placed a few trees, I placed a few buildings really. From here you can place your own buildings the way you like it. And in order to highlight the buildings, what I did was I went to the lights tab and I placed 4 fill lights there. So not 4 exactly, there are quite a few on the windows. Basically I placed these fill lights, which will give that slight glow to my final render. And that's it really. That was my final stuff, and everything else was tree clusters and nothing else. And then I went ahead and of course I tweaked the water a little bit, again with the help of the water tab, the ocean tab over here. I tweaked that, and I placed my camera over here, put a small cat there you go. And so what I'm about to show you, you do not have to know it, because this is for later parts. But in order for you to create a fantastic render, just follow along for this particular video. So click on the photo tab, and all you have to do is, in order to set up your camera with your arrow keys, wherever you're comfortable on your landscape, you can, with your right click held, you can move on your camera like that. And first of all, set up your camera. So in order to set up the camera, you have to click on that store camera button there, and the moment you store it, once you're happy with your scene, the moment you store it, it'll look like something like this, or yours might look a bit different. Doesn't matter, because you're just going to plug in my settings in your scene there. So what you do is copy my settings. For example, this is a setting I used for my final scene. I'm gonna leave the setting file on my Facebook page or in the description. I'll mention that to you, and you can please like my Facebook page and download the settings file from there, and then just plug it in over here. In order to plug in the settings file, all you have to do is click on these 3 lines over here, go to edit, and basically load effects. Go to these 3 lines here, go to file and load effects. The moment you click on load effects, you can load in my setting file, and it'll take in this entire value. Do not worry about the settings file, the settings at the moment. I'll be explaining that again, and I've already uploaded a video of the entire settings in Lumion, which is a 2 hours long video, which you can use in order to master up your settings in Lumion. in order to create these realistic renders. So once you have that, so I'm just gonna I'm just gonna show you quickly how I do it. So I'm just gonna save that file, save effects. I'm gonna name that Lumion scene effect. That's saved. For example, if this is your new scene, this is what it looks like. You go to file, load effects, and just select that, and that's it. You will be presented with my settings on your scene, and in order to render that, you can of course adjust the focal length if required. You can turn it up there, keep it somewhere there, and then in order to render, you can hit the render photos. And in case if you're wondering how did I get the plane up on the sky there, I went to the, it's available in the I think the outdoor tab, sorry, on the transport tab. If you go to air, you've got these huge airplanes, you know, these Boeing 747s, and I've just lifted that up. I placed it there first, and with this select button I lifted that up, rotated it to make it look nice, like as if it's flying there, and that's it really. And I put up a few birds from the people and animal scene. That's it. And in order to render, so now to render that, all you have to do is click on render. Don't worry about these again, these are post-processing bit, and you can select the size you want to render at and select 1 or whatever, name your file, and save sorry, and save that, and it should start rendering. And that's it really for this part. I mean, and at the end of this video, you should be able to now create this landscape and be kind of confident using Lumion, moving around Lumion, using Lumion and things like that. So for the next part, if you're continuing this tutorial series, if you're following along, in the next part I'll be showing you how to import a model and start off with the textures really. Once you feel confident with this part, placing trees, placing landscapes, move on to the next part, which is very important, where I'll be explaining how you can create new materials in Lumion and move on really part by part. So alright, thank you for joining in this video, and wish you all the best in your Lumion rendering journey. Thank you. Thank you all for watching this video. If you did enjoy the video, then please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with my future uploads.